Welcome to the iNETrepreneur radio show. We are so honored to bring you your host, the ultimate celebritypreneur, connecting businesses and celebrities worldwide. Winner of the Networking Organization of the Year, best-selling author, magazine publisher, trainer, and owner and founder of Network Together and the iNETrepreneur Media Network from magazines, TV, and radio network. We're excited to bring you your host, Mr. Robert W. Jones.
Welcome, everyone. I am so glad you're here today. I am Robert Jones. I'm the owner and the chairman of the iNETrepreneur Network. The iNETrepreneur Network is the largest omnichannel marketing organization in the world at this time, and a lot of people tease me because not everyone knows what omnichannel even means. It's just the newest way to form connections with your audience, starting from the mission and the messages from your mind that come out to your intended audience. And I just want to remind everyone that this week is Mother's Day. So on May 9th, all of us, if you have a great mom or grandmom or significant, mother type figure in your life, please reach out to her and give her, all the love and affection that she could possibly muster. I know that we're celebrating Mother's Day 3 times this weekend because, for me, it's going to be my wife and my mom's, and I'm awfully excited to celebrate each and every one of them in my way. And I've been very fortunate in especially my later life. I had a stepmother who came into my life, and I consider her my mom just as much as my biological mom. I love them both. They created a lot of superpowers that I use to this day. Compassionate, certainly, having empathy, being able to listen, being able to understand, and actually really a lot of the other things that they taught me were just, being aware. And I think that that's a lot about what we're going to be talking about in today's show, is just being a little bit more aware. And with our two guests, we're going to be talking about energy, and we're going to be talking about behavior. But what I would like to do right now is as I'm getting the show off and going, I just want to remind everyone to please subscribe to our radio channel. It's at YouTube.com/iNETrepreneur Radio. And I know that might be hard for a lot of us. It's a crazy name to try to spell. But, I certainly, want you to go to at least maybe even our website, networktogether.net. Up there's a YouTube icon, and you can get to the radio show that way. Also, look us up on Facebook. Certainly you can like us on Facebook and put your comments in there, because we want to have a lot of interaction with you, the audience out there. We put this radio show on each and every week. For the most part, we highlight different members of the iNETrepreneur Network and those who have been booked The Art of Connection. And today I'm really glad that you're here. I also want to recommend that people go to ntevents.net. That's NT Events, like Network Together, ntevents.net. And on that little URL, you'll come to our calendar, and you'll see over 1,000 meetings and events, that we put on per year. Last week, we had our Arctic Connection Summit. We ended up having 177 attendees, and we had attendees from 5 different countries and 13 different states. So it was a real fun time. And both our guests today were at that event, actually on our panels. And so I'm really excited about getting to talk maybe a little bit about the event and their own superpowers. So without further ado, I would like to bring on my first guest. Her name is Kenyatta Turner. Hi, Kenyatta. How are you?
Hey, Robert. I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, you know what? I love having this show each and every week, because I feel like it's so funny, because I say there's 3 ways to get to know people, okay? You can get to know them over business on a one-on-one. You can get to know them, at like a sporting or an entertainment event, and or even a networking event. And the third way is you put them on the radio show, and you find out stuff about people you would not find out about them any other way.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, I call it like the airline seat. Sometimes you have your best conversations next to someone that you'll never see again. So it's like, I call that bringing out the socks in the sock drawer, because you're going to get some really you solicited advice because you're asking for it, one, and two, they're going to just bring it because they have no worry about any repercussions from their advice, right?
Right, because they're never going to see you again.
So it's like, half that, I don't even know if they do it anymore because it's been so long since I flight. And I have to admit, I'm a self-professed person who does not like to get on the airplane. I am not an airplane guy. I'd rather be in a car. I'd rather be on a horse, or I'd rather be in an RV to cross the country. I mean, will I get on the plane to go? Absolutely. But for the most part, I'm like just not a person who likes to do that. But I'm really excited for you to be here today, Kenyatta. And, and what's really crazy is we've known each other, I mean, more than a year, more than 2 years, more than 3 years. We've probably known each other 5 years, and we've been cycling around in our respective communities, but it's only been really recently that you and I have been able to align, our communities, our superpowers, and our collaborative efforts, hasn't it?
Yes. I think I met you for the first time at a Network Together meeting in Scottsdale at the location. I think it was like a finance office, if I remember correctly, in North Scottsdale. And someone invited me to a meeting there. And that was the first time I'd been to a Network Together meeting, and you happened to be there that day.
Yeah. That was at, I believe that was at Cal Choice, or it may have been even earlier.
Cal Choice. Yep, that was what it's called. Yep.
And we were there at Cal Choice for about 1.5 years, and that was about 4 years ago. So it has been about 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, time is flying. And I think at that time you had just started discovering your own entrepreneurial superpowers yourself, and you were coming out with your own business, Freedom Consulting, as I recall.
I was fairly new to, well, let's see. So 5 years ago, I've been an entrepreneur. Why I left, jumped off that cliff 7 years ago this month. So when I probably ran into you, I was only about 2 years into that journey, and was starting really to formulate what Freedom Empire Consulting was going to wind up turning into. So yeah, that was early days for me.
Well, and what I love about you, Kenyatta, is you really have a passion for everyone. And I know a lot of times you work with women and you want to raise women up, but quite frankly, you raise me up too. So that means you raise up men. And that's what I love about you. One of my favorite sayings that my mom had ever said was, it's not a man thing, it's not a woman thing, it's a person thing. And the sooner that we find that out, the sooner we can all collectively have success together. And I always love that about her. But what I want to do is, like, for as special as my mom has been in my life, I don't know those early years. I don't know if you had a rock star grandma or aunt or mom or some other mother who might have given you superpowers in your beginning. But tell us about those early years. Those years of discovery, as I call them.
Absolutely. Well, I have to speak of my own mother because she is definitely a powerful force in my life and always have been. Only as of late, I realized and understood just how clearly, she was that for me and how similar we are, which is quite interesting. But, I grew up, my mom moved us away from Flint, Michigan when I was about 4 or 5 years old, moved us out west out here. She didn't want to raise her children there in the snow. I'm so glad she didn't, because she moved us out here, me and my sister. But she was actually a single mom for quite a period of time. My parents split up when I was very young. So we would do 2 years with my dad, 2 years with my mom. And we would do that back and forth for several years. And then when I was 16, my father passed away. I was living with him at the time. My sister was already grown out of the house. So it was just me and him. And so me and my mom reconnected during that time. And, she became responsible for me until I turned 18. But we had a very tumultuous relationship, if you will. And I understand why it was so now is because we both are in the behavioral superpower world, we're influencers. Meaning we both have certain types of personalities that can sometimes get along, but can sometimes do this. So what I learned from her is that I'm a lot like her in a lot of ways. But she's extremely powerful, very active in the community here in Arizona. I mean, I was on the call last night and I mentioned my mom to someone, and 3 people on the call goes, "That's your mom? I know her." So she's that woman, in the community, here in Phoenix. And I'm I'm not so different from her. We both move around in such a way, and we're so interested in helping people and lifting people up. She does the same thing, but in her own way. So she taught me things that I didn't pay attention to until I was ready to receive it.
Well,
If that makes sense.
yeah, and but you said something that I haven't heard before, and I think it kind of bears a little bit more examination. And when you say that you're with your mom for 2 years and then your dad for 2 years off
Right.
and on, I've never heard of that before. I mean, to me, it's almost like, I mean, I always say there's three things that make up a person: nature, nurture, and the noodle. And for the most part, all of our nature comes from those that actually raise us. That would be the moms, the dads, or like if you're in foster,
Mhm.
someone else who's just that figure role. Now, but being with a mom for 2 years and being with a dad for 2 years, I mean, that also probably had to have a profound effect on you. Tell us a little bit about the transition from going from one parent to another parent after 2 years, because really is something I've never heard of before.
Yeah, and I don't think it happens that way very often. I
No.
think, quite honestly, when I tell people that, they're like, "What?" And it was an agreement that my mom and my father had. I mean, she was very adamant that if they weren't going to be together, that he would have to help with the responsibility of raising us, and she was not going to just do it by herself or just him. So they came with this arrangement, and I really appreciated it, quite honestly, because I got a chance. It wasn't just like my dad was coming picking me up for the weekend. I mean, I got to spend time with him. I got to learn about him and him about me, and then go with her. Now, granted, they were two very different types of parents. So it was a transition, absolutely, trying to reacclimate from one to the other. But I'm really grateful that they did set it up that way, because I got to spend, almost equal time with both of them. And I know that doesn't always happen with split households, at all. So I really appreciated that they were able to make that arrangement. It was challenging, but life is challenging. So I appreciate that.
Well, and then you're not just looking at, your parents yourself, if you had any siblings, if they're in either house, and then you're also looking at different schools and different friends and different support systems. And,
Right.
and to me, that's why I do like to go so far back in a person's life, because everything that we experience, we touch, we taste, we see, we feel, we hear, all that sensory, creates us to who we are now. And that to me is really kind of phenomenal. Now, when you were a child, and it would seem like after 2 years, the moment you get to true, mastery of your relationships, that's about the time that you got plucked and you were into this other environment. What did you learn from that experience, Kenyatta?
To think fast, move fast, be adaptable, make friends fast if I had a chance, get to know people. And I didn't sit and wait around for things to happen for me. I just realized I had to make them happen for myself. So it taught me a strong sense of independence and self-reliability, confidence, because I had to learn very fast, or else I felt like I would just get swept away, So if I wanted something, I had to go get it. If I wanted to build a relationship or whatever, I mean, I had to be quick on my feet. And that's how I learned to deal with it. And it's very interesting. My sister is a little bit older than me. Her style is a little bit different. She's a lot more anchored and stable than I am. She's much more reserved in a lot of ways, but she was older than me. And conversations now I realize is that she was watching out for me as well as, because my mom and, it was a lot going on. Right. So when it was just her and I together, she was responsible for me. So she had to be a little more grounded, if you will, where I had the freedom to kind of move how I needed to. She had to kind of look over me a little bit. So she's also, I really think back, part of the mother figure that I had, because we two were always together when we were with my dad or with my mom. So when I wasn't with my mom, my sister was there. So she's also part of that mother figure, even though she's only 6 years older than I am.
When you were younger, what is some of the education that you had? What was it all schooling, or do you feel like you had mentors, other interests? I mean, your sister, it sounds like your mom. Also, let's share a little bit about your dad. What were some of the things that he also influenced you on when you were growing up?
Sure. He's funny. My dad was a techie. He was an engineer. He went to DeVry University, which is interesting. I wound up working there for 13 years after he had passed. I found I had an interest in computers like him. I have a Bachelor of Science in Computer Information Systems, graduated with honors. I could take cars apart and put them back together. I'm very technical, but I'm also very abstract and artistic and musical at the same time. So I've got both of those sides. But what he inspired me to do is to go to school. Really, that's what because he went to school. So I was like, oh, I got to go to school and get a job. He inspired me to fall down that path first, the path of school, education, get a job, work for the man, right? That's what he did.
Yeah.
So that's what
Traditional role, right?
Yes,
I call it the pay, pray, and obey lifestyle.
Yes.
But
That's basically, so I saw him doing that, and that seemed very stable to me, and it seemed to make sense to me because I had obviously so much moving around. I felt like I wanted that stability as well. My mother was always an entrepreneur. Always. I've never known her to work a job. So she always made things happen for us, but it seemed like in such a different way than he did. And his way seemed more just stable to me. So I followed that path. And it was about 7 years ago when I realized I was ready to follow my mother's path and was no longer going to work for the man, if that makes sense. So that changed things. But he inspired me to go to school and to get a good job and a career.
But I think in a way you really have the balance of both worlds in that manner. I envy you because with me, my mom was an educator. She was a PhD of curriculum instruction. And so, she's always a teacher. She's always a trainer. There isn't a given time where I don't state a sentence and she might correct me on what I say. I mean, still to this day, my mom's a mom. But she's a teacher at heart first.
Yes.
My dad, on the other hand, was a mathematician. He's a petroleum engineer. He worked for Mobil Exxon, and he had that career path. Well, you just keep going to school, you get better education. The more degrees you have, the more money you make. And what's really funny is I probably like you, I have a lot of foundation in many ways of systems and processes and putting certain organizational paths, and not in always, because I'm more of a creative. I'm more musical. I used to play bass guitar, believe it or not. I used to be a bass player. I'm a bass player. Yeah, what? Good. Yeah, wow, that's jam time. Yeah, and I was a professional juggler, and one of the things I used to do is I used to put on poetry slams, and I used to pack in people all around San Diego, to come to these slams. I just, I always loved gathering because it was very different from when I was a kid, because I was so shy. And and as I grew up, I had to become kind of like the tortoise that came out of its shell, and it was really, really hard for me, Kenyatta. And I didn't have the best of behaviors when I was a child, because in many ways, when my parents divorced too, and I had it more of like I lived with my mom during the year, and then I spent the time with my dad in the summer, and I lived with my mom in the year. And I know it was really hard for me because I left my mom the last 2 years of my high school to stay with my dad, and that really hurt her for a long time. And it took some time to recover from it. And, I look back now, and my mom told me, she's like, I understand now, all these years later, you needed to do that because it was a part of your path of growth. And I can understand, where your mom, to love you so much, and I'm sure she does, and to love your sister so much to let you go for 2 years, it also probably creates a certain amount of strength in you. And I think that you have a lot more anchor to yourself than what you think. And I think you're really amazing, but you also put some time into education. I mean, we talked a little bit about your computer background, but you also have some more experience with learning about motivation and consulting and speaking. And so not just traditional education, but you also have some non-formal schooling that you've also taken to be to kind of grow yourself. Tell us a little bit about your other non-traditional educational roads.
Sure. I joke and call myself a book nerd. I love to read. I always have. My mother, actually, my sister, taught me how to read the newspaper by the time I was 3 years old. So I was always a student of some kind. I always loved school. I was never the person who was like, oh, I don't want to go to school. No, I loved it. Loved it. So school was always fun for me. Learning's always fun for me, regardless of the topic. I'm just nosy. and I'm very curious about things. So I think that kind of drove me to continuously get,
And I wanted to stay right there. This is key. This is key in behavior for the entrepreneur. Be curious, be uncomfortable, be assertive. And one of my coaches says, if you don't want to do something, find someone to do it for you. And the other thing he says, if you're embarrassed about doing something, learn from someone so you can do it great. And that's a part of what I see you do, because in your coaching, you're influencing, and even your legal shield. What you do is you help create a protective shell for the entrepreneur so they can reach their greatness. Tell us a little bit more about being a motivational speaker and educator, because that's always been of interest to me, because you do like these crazy things on LinkedIn, which I just love and adore.
Yeah, I think it goes back to being curious and the love of learning. I love speaking to people. I love helping develop them and have an opportunity to have conversations. I mean, I spent 21 years working in colleges, so I was around people who were moving forward in their life, or at least making a valiant effort, right, by going to school. So when I coach, when I speak, it's always from a place of love and curiosity and genuine interest in helping people grow and develop. I'm fascinated by personal development because I've done it. I know about it because I'm a product of it. So I'm always excited about helping others, but you have to learn how to do these things. I'm innately an influencer. That is my behavioral style. It's very easy for me to get in front of the stage and speak to people and help encourage people. However, you have to hone those skills. You have to practice, you have to learn, you have to watch people who are great at it, like you said, and learn things from them and read books and go to trainings and all these different things, because I want to be the excellent at what I do.
Yeah.
And so I'm always working to get better at that. But it's easy for me, easier than I know it can be for others, because we're wired differently. But me, I'm in my element when I'm doing things like this. It's just, it flows from me quite effortlessly.
And I think that's something we all need to understand. We're not all great at everything, and I say that's okay. Don't be great at everything. I mean, I always say very few people become great at anything, quite frankly, because so much of us. One of the things that I remember in a mastermind, the guy who makes the Tesla, he said the people who find their greatest greatness are the ones who know themselves best.
Yes.
And I thought that was like the craziest thing, because, it's like, if you know yourself so well, you know exactly everything that you should be doing and everything, which is 90% of it, that you shouldn't be doing.
Right. Yes.
And I still think of that, and my mind still goes boom, because I go like, what if I can just take some of this 80%, 70%, 60% off of my plate and just, hit the 99%? What would life look like? Kenyatta, I'm sure that's
what if we did all that we're capable of?
Yeah.
And that to me, but without self-awareness and understanding, you don't even know what you're doing. You're spinning wheels, or you're pretending to be someone you're not, or something that you're not. And what a waste of time that is. So when you do have true, deep self-awareness, you know what you're supposed to be doing, and you avoid the square peg, round hole scenario, which is trying to do the things you shouldn't be doing. But many of us don't take the time to really look that deep. Many of us are uncomfortable looking that deep. Many of us don't even know that we can look that deep, because we've had other people telling us what we should and shouldn't do, who we can and can't be, right? And we start believing those limiting beliefs. I like this, my little quote in the Art of Connections book: your self-fulfilling prophecy will either limit you or liberate you.
Yeah.
So which is it going to be? But not everyone even knows. So if you're out there listening and you're like, what is she talking about? How can I be more than I already am? Then reach out to me. I'll share with you how.
And that's where it goes. I am always like this. To me, being a believer of God, I mean, God gives us everything when we're born, and then all of a sudden it depends on our nurturing whether stuff gets piled on top of it, or whether we're allowed to grow on top of it.
Right.
And I feel like why personal development matters so much is because, it helps your heart set, it helps your mindset, and it helps your skill set, because those are the three things. I call it the noodle part. The noodle can trump all of that.
Right.
But one of the special topics that you and I are going to be talking about today for everyone who's listening is, I really want to go into behavior. And it's like so much of the time we think of behavior and we think of it's good behavior, it's bad behavior, it's, or you're happy or you're sad. And if you do some type of action, people perceive it as some type of output. And, behavior, if we look at it that way, to me, it really it pigeonholes the full beauty of what behavior really is, because for the most part, there is no right and wrong or good and bad. It's just it's just the use of behavior. So what I kind of want to do in this part of our interview today is let's talk a little bit about behavior. And you're the expert, Kenyatta. What if you were to define behavior? What is it?
Well, first, behavior causes 87% of performance issues in life and business. And your behavior is truly tied to your habitual actions and how you show up in the world, especially under pressure and stress, frustration. When any kind of emotional stimulus comes in, your behavior is what comes out. Now, I'm not talking about personality at all, actually. You can go get a new personality if you want one. Your behavior is much harder to change because it's already wired within you at a very young age. About the age of 3, it starts getting embedded into your amygdala. And that's 95% of you is your behavior, and 5% of you is your learned behavior, your EQ, if you will. It's like Superman is always Superman, right? But he puts on a Clark Kent costume to show the world what he needs to in the moment. But he's always Superman. So your behavior is always there, but it's what you choose to show in the moment that is the learned behavior. And that's the thing, or maybe for someone like myself, typically I'm not patient. I'm extremely fast paced and actually impatient. But people will tell me as of late, oh my God, Kenyatta, you're totally patient. I'm like, no. That's because I choose to be patient. I've learned to be patient, not because I'm wired for patience. Okay. I know what my report says, right? So that's the difference between, or that's what person or behavior really is. It's like, are you planned or are you spontaneous? Are you abstract or are you concrete? Are you results focused or are you relationship focused? That's already within you. Robert, those things are already defined within you.
Yep.
And so we don't tell anyone that they're so surprised about. What we do is quantify it and qualify it by showing them the data. So I say it's not personal, it's just science. Because if people don't relate to you, because let's say you're really abstract and you always are coming up with ideas, but their behavior style is very concrete and they think inside of a box, imagine the conflict that comes when you both are trying to work on a project together. They just keep wanting to know how it was done in the past and what are the parameters. You over here going like, we don't care about any parameters. We're going to build a new boat. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You're speaking different languages. That's not personality. That is behavior. And that's what we measure.
Well, and I'm going to go back to the 95 and the 5%, because I really believe that that's where we define our own success and our happiness. And what I mean by that is if 95% of your true behavior is your 95%, and then the 5% is your on and off switch. When it's on, every time that you're allowed to have it on, you're going to be happier and you're going to be more successful. Yeah. But if you're training yourself to turn it off, what happens? You probably develop more fear, you develop more stress, you develop more burnout, you develop more unhappiness, you start to critique, you do the things that matter least, because it's not within the true behavioral tool set that you you come in with, right? I mean, I can't. It's like the ice. Even the iceberg has 10%. So if you're talking 5%, it's even a little bit deeper underneath that line. But it is. But for you, when it comes to let's start personally before we even get into the business, because I think you got to be happy at the home.
Mhm.
There's a saying, happy wife, happy life. I truly believe that, or happy partner, happy
Yeah.
partner. I don't know what to rhyme with that. I'm going to make something up sometime, but we'll get to
Yeah,
that.
how
I don't know. I
you
don't know. Why is it so useful to understand behavior in personal relationships? I mean,
Yeah.
you talked a little bit about work, but I mean, in personal relationships, like even marriages, I'm sure knowing the behaviors of each other helps.
Yeah, it's all the same. It doesn't even really
Mm,
matter the nature of the relationship, because it's relevant in all relationships. Communication is relevant in all relationships. So, for
mhm.
instance, we do what we call relationship enhancement reports, and we have a tool. And I actually was just with two of my friends last night. Actually, you know them, Mike and Rochelle Polton,
Yes, yeah,
and yeah.
absolutely.
And so, we took both of their behavioral profiles and we put them together in this comparison report. And I had an hour-long conversation with them last night, going over that with them. Now, they've been happily married for quite some time, but they still, even then, learned some things about each other that they could have speculated, but now they know exactly. Now they know why, or they know how similar they are, or how different they are in certain areas. And those areas that they're different are important to pay attention to, right? Just as much as the ones where they're almost the same. And
Yes.
so it doesn't matter the relationship, but what matters is two things. And I'm going to say from a leadership perspective, leading yourself and leading others. Number one, you have to have a deep self-awareness, honest, unapologetic behavioral self-awareness. Second, you need to be able to manage the differences in others. Meaning, when you interact with a spouse or a significant other or a family member or whoever, and they are behaviorally different from you, that you don't ignore those differences, or you don't try to impose your behavioral style on them, or you don't discount their differences or think that what they're doing is the wrong way just because it's different than the way that you do it. And then the last one is, when they do behave differently, do not take it personal,
Right.
because that is where the conflict happens. If you guys are both planning a trip and one person is always wanting to know where we're going, where we're staying, what time we got to get there, we got to leave at this time and this time. And the other person's like, hey, can't we just kind of go with the flow and just show up?
Mhm.
And then you go to the person who's always planned, like, man, why do you always have to do that? Can't you just relax? Well, if they're wired to not relax, no, they can't just relax. It takes a lot of flexing. And that's exactly what we call it, behavioral flexing out of your own zone to meet somewhere else where they're at. And someone asked me just the other day, they said, Kenyatta, well, how come people just can't flex to me? What do I do when they're not flexing to me? I said, well, first, you're looking at it all wrong. Don't ever expect them to flex to you, ever. Okay. Instead, you pay attention and learn how to flex to them. And you'll be
I,
amazed at what happens when
you know,
you take control over your own actions and emotions, as opposed to thinking others should take control of theirs. You can't worry about them. You can only worry about yourself.
Yeah, one of my mentors, a long time ago, he said, and this is where I came up with this. Is he said most of the people in life work on what they do and not who they are, and he says that the faster that they start working on who they are, they'll find that the universe will unfold in front of them,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it's because he says it's hard work to change the universe. It's hard work. And
Right.
he's like, if one person can just have the self-awareness to change themselves,
There you
you know
go.
everything will happen in the way that it was meant to be, because then everything
Absolutely.
unfolds for them. But when you keep fighting with yourself, and you keep
Hmm.
fighting with your family, and you keep fighting with the business people, you have to look at, like, what am I pushing? It's like, what do I duplicate? What do I replicate? What do I
Right.
eliminate? And what do I automate? And that's the business. And you can also do that with personalities, but,
Hmm.
being more knowledgeable about behavior. And I think that's the other thing, Kenyatta, that, in personal development, I didn't put it in the book, but I'll probably put it in the next book. I have a
Hmm.
quote too I have lots of quotes because I have a
Yeah,
lot
me
of it,
too. Me
right?
too. I've got
Yeah.
tons of them.
And, and the quote is what good is personal development if you're not going to use it? I mean,
Yeah.
that is probably one of the biggest things I see, because I see so many self-professed people that actually go through personal development, and yes, they get the knowledge part of it. They do. But it's like, man, if you don't have the heart part of it, it's like knowledge is in a way, it's almost like that 5%. It's like it's right there, but without the activity, the action, the practice, the heart, the skills, it becomes harder, doesn't it?
It does. And, I'll add something to that, Robert, when it comes to personal development, because I'm a personal development coach, I focus on behavior.
Yes.
And the reason why I focus on behavior is because I understand and I've learned that if you're going to focus on personal development, how do you know what to develop? Like, how do you know? And so that's where I come in. That's what we do with behavior. It's the framework for everything, because once I can show you your behavioral, your superpowers and your kryptonite, I call it, then you know what you should be developing in the first place. I mean, you can go grab any one of these books anywhere and be like, I'm going to read this book. Okay, but is that the book you should be reading? What are you trying to work on? So it goes one step before personal development to me, which is, where are you? What's your baseline? Now you know what to develop. Now you know where you should be focusing. And you're so right. Once you have all the information, I mean, people say knowledge is power, but that's not true. Applied knowledge is power. So when you're using what you learned, but you've learned the right things, that's when you become unstoppable, in my opinion.
Well, we're going to take a little bit of break here, and then we're going to come back into our discussion here. I mean, I hope you're enjoying what we're talking about today. Of course.
I'm having a blast. All day long. I'm having a blast.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and play one of our sponsor commercials, and we'll come right back.
All right.
Network together. It's all about connections. Expand your sphere of influence. Build relationships. Be part of something bigger. Be part of Network Together.
All right. Well, welcome back. That was a little bit of a plug with Network Together.
That was cool.
Yeah. and so we're working on the iNETrepreneur network. But I mean, you probably heard me say this before. People ask me, why do you call the organization Network Together? And I said, because it's funner than networking apart.
Yeah, of course.
And it reminds me about the conversation that we're having here about behavior. Unless you're going to be a monk in a monastery on your own, a solo monk or something like that. I mean, behavior matters, because behavior really is the interconnections between all things, both physical and non-physical.
Yes.
I mean, it really is a word that I think that is used not enough and even misunderstood even more. It
can be.
I mean, in my opinion, and I might be wrong, but I do believe we don't concentrate. I believe the best marketers in the world, are also the best behavior therapists in the world, because they understand how to talk to an audience in the way that the audience wants to receive it. And that's something that I get so infuriated, because so many people, they say, I want to be a great speaker. I have a great radio show or have a television show. But the thing is here's the problem. They never say, I want to be the world's best listener.
Right.
I want to be right. I want to be the world's best at receiving information. I want to be the world's best at understanding. And, and so they put so much effort on what they're going to say to people. I think they sometimes forget on what they really need to hear from people. Right. And I think that's really important. And, a part of hearing from people is also starting with the first step, which I want to get into in this segment, and that's self-awareness. Because, a lot of people, again, it's another place I believe that we talk about in self-awareness, and we hear it and we feel like, oh, I have an itch, so I got to scratch it. That's self-awareness. Well, I think we're going way deeper. Or, self-awareness is like, well, I can taste sugar and I know it's sweet, or I can taste salt and I know it's, whatever. But, tell us a little bit. Let's go deeper into like maybe self-awareness. When you're actually clinically speaking, as a consultant or coach, when it comes to self-awareness, what are you really expressing to someone when you say, hey, Joe or Jane, I think we need to work on being a little bit more self-aware because you're missing some things, let's say.
Mhm.
Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that process.
Well, one of my favorite, a quote, again, of course, that I use all the time, it's by a woman named Veronica Tagleva. And she says, to know yourself, you must first sacrifice the illusion that you already do. And I'll repeat that. To know yourself, you must first sacrifice the illusion that you already do. So that's literally where it starts, because people will feel like, oh, well, I already know myself. I'm 40 this years old or 50 this years old or whatever age, I've got it figured out. And my question back to them is like, do you? Like, okay, so let's talk about that. I mean, because that's a fixed mindset right there, right? To say that I've already learned what I need to learn and I know these things about myself. Well, then my question would be, why are you not where you want to be? What is holding you back? If you figured everything out, then why? Right? So it really becomes a conversation of, let's just strip all that away for a moment. Let's be vulnerable. Let's have humility, because that, if you have that, then you can actually seek the true self-awareness you need, which is the foundation for growth and development. So it has to really start with going, okay, maybe I can learn something new about myself, or maybe I can get a better understanding of not only who I am, but why I am. So that's what we start speaking about, is why you behave the way you do. Recognize that so you can check yourself before you wreck yourself, is one of my, partners says. And it's really, truly that, have the humility to understand that what you think you know might not be that, but be open to learning something. And then when they take the exercise and they see in the paper, they're like, oh, then the conversation becomes so much easier, because again, people will say, well, I've taken Myers-Briggs and Colby's and all that. And I'm like, we're not the same as those platforms. Those platforms often tell you to take those exercises again after a couple of years because things have changed, but we're not measuring what changes. We're measuring what usually doesn't change. It's an entirely different conversation.
Well, and it's a conversation that I think that we all need to keep having, because the conversation, even one thing I've learned, and this is what's really cool, and I'm gonna come back and circle back, with this again, is, I tell people that, one of the greatest things that I've learned is to read great works of art again. So let's say I usually say Think and Grow Rich. I still remember I read Think and Grow Rich, and then I read it again 20 years later. It was much of a change in the way that I perceived that book, in the way that I was looking on how I received, again, it's behave. See, and where I'm going with this is behavior. So many of us think behavior is outward, but it's also inward. And, and I think that that's just it. Behavior is one of the few, I call it like membrane words, where it's an inside outside game. There is no all inside with behavior. There is no all outside with behavior. They both manifest. And you know what? You can lie on the inside as much as you can lie on the outside.
Oh, absolutely.
and there's and I don't, and I hear people say, some people are, we talk about lying, and I say, the worst thing I know is a person will lie to themselves far more often than they'll lie to others. And I'm talking even criminal liars.
All day long lie to yourself about things.
Yeah, it's like all day long. Give me the 24/7 hotel, motel, Holiday Inn sign. It is always going on. And I think I think that sometimes when you really get around people, and this is where people matter so much, Kenyatta, because in my world, I used to be in digital technologies, and you can fool the fool in digital technology because you can have anyone make you who you are, but you can't fool the school when you show up to teach, because they're going to feel it right away. And that's some of the things that I say when it comes to speakers. You can be the best trained person in the world, but if that training does not replace authenticity and caring and passion and love and empathy. And another word that you've brought back to me, which I love, is humility. And humility is the one word I believe that actually creates a place of receiving information. The people who have humility, the people who are humble, are really, for many of them, the best content developers I can think of in business, because they are trained to hear who you are, and they are trained to take who you are and what you do, even your why as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And be able to connect with audiences, which gets us to another place that I want to talk about. I'm loving our conversation. I
Hey,
hope
I'm
you're
digging
loving
it.
the
Let's go.
conversation because
What's
I'm
next?
down. What did I say? Down like a clown, right? And in another place that I really feel bad for is, I say it's not about winning. It's about succeeding, because when you win, there can only be one. But when you succeed, you can take as many people as you can with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes, we get so caught up in trying to understand what winning is, versus what succeeding is. And what I mean by that is, and I want you to help me a little bit, and everyone that's watching is, in success, there is again, it's like behavior. There's a lot of different definitions, on what success means. And I really feel like, the more that we understand ourselves, the more we can actually define our own success, because success should have, if there's 7 billion people on the planet, there should be 7 billion forms of success. And I may be wrong, but would you agree with me, or would you say that that's not true, in that type of definition of success?
Well, I actually like the very simple definition of the success. Like if you look it up in the dictionary, it'll say something simply like it's the achievement of a goal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. So whatever the goal is, did you achieve it or not? So yes, there will be multiple variations of that. Each person has a different goal. Each person has a different dream and aspiration. But I think what I love about attaining success, meaning achieving the goal, is really the progress towards a concept or an idea that can come to fruition. And whether it does or doesn't, whether that goal is actually achieved, but progress made toward it, I think that's also a form of success.
Yeah.
So achieving the goal is one form, working towards it is another form. If it's done in such a way where it's bringing you joy and love and happiness, and you're working towards something, that is a success in itself, versus sitting there thinking about it and not ever doing anything towards it.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm going to keep working with you, because I want to keep playing on this, because this is good stuff. I mean, because success is really a funny word, because I always say like, one of the things I say in coaching is goals are for business and intentions are for life. And, and for you to really love all, have a life plan, and your business plan fits within your life plan. Because if your business plan is over your life plan, you're going to look back at your life and say, geez, I don't think I needed more business out of it. I needed more life out of my life. Right. Yes. But that makes so much sense with success. It's the achievement. And you could say the achievements, of 7 billion people are probably all phenomenally different from each other. But at the end of the day, success, leads into happiness. And I think for most of us, I mean, we really do have similar needs and desires and wants and requirements, which leads us to, how you can help people do that, Kenyatta. And this is where we're coming into you being a superpowers coach. And what that means is like, since we all, maybe want a certain level of joy, we want a certain level of happiness, you come in as a superpower coach and you say, let's just clear all this clutter out. Let's get to the heart of matter, and let's get you on track by, getting people in your life that have superpowers that are not yours, and getting you to use your superpowers. And, how do you help entrepreneurs and business owners get to that place?
Yeah. And it's so much fun that we use the term superpowers, because we actually kind of coined that, behavioral superpowers, but really what it is a behavioral identity. And it's or behavioral brand, because it is just who you are. So how I help people is first by having them take this exercise, 15 minutes, where the data is going to show them, okay, what the science has already proven. This is 30 years of research, validate 125 countries and 11 different languages. And you take a 15-minute exercise, and there's like 40 reports that come out of it, right? That are all based on you uniquely. And we can help this or use this information for children, young as 12, and all the way up. Okay. And so that's why we're starting a charter school. It's a behavioral charter school. Every child will know what their behavioral style is as well. So it's truly a baseline. So I help them by having them get access to the work or to the profile. And then we coach them literally on whatever it is that they might be looking for. So as an example, you mentioned Think and Grow Rich. I've read that book every 12 weeks since 2018, every 12 weeks. What I learned when I understood my behavior is that I read and do that book like I'm wired to. When I dawned on that, I realized that all my coaching and teaching programs have to start with the behavioral profile, because I can customize the learning experience, the engagement experience, the implementation experience based on a person's behavioral tendencies. I can customize the coaching. So we do that at an enterprise level for leadership training and workforce development. We do it at the school level for classroom management. We do it for individuals or families or groups. It doesn't really matter. Everything starts with behavior. It's the linchpin. So from that, it affects your learning style, your communication style, your decision-making style, your relationship style. So regardless of what the business owner or the person needs, we start with having them take that exercise. And then we work on, well, what are you looking to develop? Is it a team environment? Are you looking to hire? Because we have hiring reports to help organizations make sure that they're having behavioral diversity is what we call it. I mean, there's basically 7, and I'll kind of end with this, core competencies that we use this information for. The first one is behavioral awareness. The second one is social emotional learning, the EQ, right? Social emotional maturity. The third one is behavioral finance, because we know that people handle money how they're wired to handle money, which is behaviorally. So we have reports around finance. Then culturally proficient, that's the next one. 5 is behavioral D, E, I, and B. This topic is insane right now, obviously. But when you're having conversations around diversity, if you leave out behavioral diversity, you're leaving out a gap, because behavioral diversity cares not about your age, your sex, your height, your weight, your color of your skin. It has nothing to do with that. But we help organizations realize they need to have behavioral diversity as well as other types of diversity. And then ethical leadership, obviously, and the number 7 is quadratic communication. And we basically understand that we have 4 ways that people communicate, and they have an order of operation. There's the goal setters. They want to know what. There is lifestyle. That's mine. I want to know who. There's the stability quadrant. They want to know how. And there's the information quadrant, wants to know why. I communicate that way, and that's how I want people to communicate with me. But you talked about knowing your audience a moment ago, right? Most people, when they think of knowing their audience, they know them demographically. What schools did they go to? What level of education? Am I speaking to men or women, business owners or moms, right? But when you know their communication style from the quadratic equation, you know exactly how you need to communicate with them, because no matter what you're saying, all they're sitting there is thinking is she ever going to get to the point? If they're the goal setting, or they're thinking, well, how is she going to help me do this? If they're in the stability quadrant, if they're lifestyle, they're thinking, well, who's going to be there when I show up? And if they're in the information quadrant, they're like, where's the facts and data to back up anything she's saying? So you then can communicate with people how they actually are going to listen to you and how they learn. So those are just some of the 7 ways that we use this to help people in their organizations or families.
Well, and I think when it comes to behavioral diversity, it's something that I've always strived for, because I've always been a firm believer of true diversity is a great measure, not from because all construction starts within the mind. I don't care what it is. All construction, you're an architect, and then you hire contractors and you build. But no matter what, you're designing something tangible, and really it all is based upon the structure of the behaviors within the mind and the ability and the capacity to do it.
Yes.
I mean, really, that is what what it's about. And we spend so much time in the media on stuff that really doesn't matter. We're placing the word diversity on the things that help us least. You actually are training people on the things that will really help us most. And one of the things that I'm going to say in the next book too, because you and I were so about really holding to our words, because words matter.
Yes.
Is I always say, embrace diversity, but let's all work towards unity, because if we can unify, we can all fly. And I think that that's an important thing. Now, I would be remiss, because we've almost gotten through an hour, Kenyatta. Can you believe that? Just
Oh my
like
God,
that.
so fast.
Just like that. Like, wow. But one of the things, so here we are. It's like I used to be a club DJ, and so we're going to turn the mic. Okay,
All right.
we're just going to turn the mic. I'm going to do a little tabling, here right now, and now we're going to go into a different world that you and I both appreciate. We know, like, and love it. And that is peace of mind. And I've had peace of mind in my life for 8 years now. And what I'm talking about is something else that you do. It's another superpower of help, and that is the legal aspect of business owners and people's personal lives. And that is, there's a company called Legalshield. And what's really funny with Legalshield about it is, just like behavior, there's a lot of misconceptions on what Legalshield is and what Legalshield can do and what it means to you. So tell us a little bit about Legalshield, so a layperson can kind of understand, not to look at the labeling of what Legalshield is, but what the behavioral, it's almost like the behavioral aspects of what Legalshield provides a person.
It is. So, and I've been with Legalshield, with the company, for 7 years now. And behaviorally, people in our country are not used to picking up the phone and calling an attorney to have their questions answered about anything in life or business. Instead, they're wired to Google it or ask someone else who's not a lawyer because it's less expensive, right? We're behaviorally wired to only use them when someone's bleeding or there's a fire, or someone's in jail. Like, we don't think to use them proactively because it's too expensive to do that. We live in the country with the most attorneys in any other country, but no one can afford them. So that's a broken system. So what Legalshield basically did is says, hey, let's make sure everyone can afford to get access to quality, equal opportunity, and, have access to attorneys, right? Our mission is, justice, opportunity, equality, right? For everyone. So the company basically creates a process where everyone kind of crowd funds. We all pay a little bit of money per month, and we get access to quality law firms all across the United States and Canada, and now the United Kingdom. So much like an HMO, where you pay your premium and you go to the doctor when you need to, hopefully you go proactively and preventatively, right? But if you still never went, you're still going to pay your monthly fee. And then when you get hurt, you're like, thank goodness I have insurance, right? Yeah. So Legalshield, similar, like, you should go to the doctor more often and get checkups, but not everybody does, right? But it's there when you need it. So Legalshield, you should call your attorney early and often to get advice and consultation before you sign the contract or do whatever you're going to do, right? But oftentimes people will wait because they can't afford it. But if you could afford it and it was just a few dollars a month, well, then it'd be much like your insurance, where you would call you would go when you needed more often. Now, here's the thing. Here's where we're not like insurance. Very clear on this. No one ever wants to use any of their insurances. Car insurance, flood insurance, fire insurance. You don't want to use any of that, even health insurance, because that means you might be sick. Yep. Okay. So we're not like that. And we don't raise the rates when you do use it. Okay. Instead, we encourage you to use it early and often. We don't raise your rates. We're like, come to us anytime you need to. We're still there. And that's a misconception sometimes that people have as well. The next misconception that people have is that, well, what kind of lawyers can I get for $25 a month? Like, they must be like my cousin Vinny or something, right? And it's not the case, right? Our system wouldn't work if it was like that. So all of our attorneys are AV rated, they're top of the line, and they probably charge $400 to $600 an hour. You just don't pay that as a member. So it's a smart way to get access to something that you need anyway, and just put it in the budget for and if you're a business owner, this is clearly a no-brainer, because all the implications that are involved around being a business, compliance and regulation and taxes and employees, and you're trying to figure out all that stuff on your own. So if you just had a Legalshield membership, you would be like the big dogs, because think of one big famous company that you know of that doesn't use lawyers. They all do, but you don't have any. So that's what we're there for. And the last thing I'll add is that we're there to protect people from the companies that would do them harm. unfortunately. So we're there to help you when your insurance company is not trying to do your deal with your claim. We're there to help you when that happens. We're there when the cell phone company tries to overcharge you a bunch of ridiculous fees and you're like, I need to talk to the supervisor, and they're like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? I call my law firm for that stuff. I don't deal with those things. I call my lawyer. I tell people, what would Oprah do? Oprah would call her lawyer. She wouldn't deal with stuff. So that's how I roll.
Well, I love it. I mean, I say that when you have Legalshield, the most wonderful thing that I can think of with Legalshield is it puts the power of the attorney in your very own pocketbook, because it is affordable. And it is something that I believe that all entrepreneurs and people who aren't entrepreneurs can use.
Absolutely.
And it's a small monthly fee. And one of the things that a lot of people don't know is you can utilize Legalshield not for an hour, not for 2 hours, not for even 3 hours per month, but for as much time as you need.
It's unlimited advice and consultation.
Yes. So, there's a legal term for that. It's called ad nauseum. So if you need an attorney for ad nauseum worth of time, Legalshield is there to help you with it. Well,
I called 3 or 4 times a month, and people say, well, what are you, in trouble, or are you criminal? And I'm like, yeah, I know I look like a criminal, but I'm not.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just smart.
I have your information scrolling across the screen here, Kenyatta. What a wonderful hour getting to spend this with you, live and in action. Tell us the best ways to get a hold of you.
Sure. You can obviously just email me the information down here below, Kenyatta@freedomempireconsulting.com. Call or text at that number as well. I'm on LinkedIn, and you can probably find me on Facebook as well. Oh, and all the social media on Instagram, all the things. You can find me, Kenyatta Turner or Freedom Empire. If I'm doing my job, then my name should come up.
Well, Kenyatta, I really enjoyed having you on the show here today. I mean, I love it so much. We're going to have to do this again, because
Yes.
I hope we provided everyone with just a lot of information out here. And I just want to remind everyone that we are here every Thursday from 2:30 to 3:30. Right now it's Pacific time. Sometimes it's Mountain Standard Time, because we're that crazy state, Arizona, where we magically never change. And that's okay with me. I like being the rebel. But thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yes. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate it. All of you out there, thanks for watching.
Again, thanks for everyone for being on the show today. We can't make this show without you, and I can't make this stuff up. I'm so glad that Kenyatta was with me here today. Until next week, my name is Robert Jones with the iNETrepreneur Radio Network. Thank you.
You've been watching the iNETrepreneur Show, a production of the iNETrepreneur Radio Network, with host Robert W. Jones. Join Robert each week as he visits with new and exciting guests who inspire, teach, and mentor entrepreneurs worldwide. Follow Robert each Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and 8:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time.